Welcome to the Quintessential Listening Poetry Online Radio and YouTube Podcast, streamed live from the heart of Washington, D.C. Here, you'll find a portal to vibrant voices, echoing souls, and an ongoing celebration of the extraordinary power of language. So, prepare yourself to join host Dr. Michael Anthony Ingram and his special guests as they explore traditional and spoken word forms of poetry.
I am here with my special guest, Ray Whitaker. Ray has been writing since he was 17 years old, and he has evolved significantly since then in terms of his writing. Now he focuses on writing for the everyday person, aiming to connect with their thoughts through introspection. Ray has been in various literary societies, and he's a 3-time writer in residence. He currently resides in Colorado Springs, USA. He has degrees in music as well as respiratory care therapy. Ray has published 4 books, including Acknowledgments and The Impromptu of Love of Music. Ray, welcome to the program.
Good to be here.
Let's begin this poetic journey. What is poetry?
Golly, that's a broad subject. And I guess I'll begin to answer that by saying what poetry could be and a bit about what it is. It could be the possibility of using eloquent language to convey context and images. I think that's what's taught in schools and expounded on in university settings. However, it's so much more than that. Poetry is an art form in many countries. It's not a measurement, although poet A.R. Ammons used measurements in a delightful poem called Cassidelia Falls. I've used measurements in some of my pieces that worked well, but it isn't measurements. I think poetry is reaching into the top of the reader or the listener's head and deftly removing constraints while replacing those with new openings.
Removing constraints. Tell me more about removing constraints. What do you mean? Tell me more.
If you're reading a piece and all of a sudden the metaphor that you read or the allusion or the allegory that you read opens up a whole new picture of what you were reading, that's removing constraints. It gets the reader beyond simple punctuation, simple line spacing. It gets the reader into a different zone where their creativity is enhanced. That's why it's important to remove constraints. That's why good poetry does that.
There's so many schools of thought in terms of poetry. Some people view poetry as dying, that it's not good as it once was. Things have changed so much across the poetic landscape. Is poetry important?
I think maybe perhaps where the people, I don't want to generalize, but I will say that there seems to be a huge dichotomy between the academics and the rest of poetry, the people that are producing poetry today. And I think if you don't understand all of the years, eons, and thousands of years of poetry, and yet you are compelled to be a poet, I think there's a breakdown in the understanding of what poetry is this day and age. It's evolved. I think poetry has evolved all along. Different schools of thought. Yes. In many cultures around the world, poetry is very important.
Yes.
It's considered an art in the purview of higher consciousness folk. Here in the U.S., one of my poetry idols said that poetry is not taught in high schools well. It's Billy Collins, poet laureate of the United States. I think that's where some of the disdain comes from here in America. And of course it's important. Of course we need something to expand our horizons beyond looking out.
Please share with me an early experience where you learned that poetic language had power.
The sonnet Ozymandias by Percy Shelley was one that I was taught in 7th grade in school. No one ever read poetry to me as I was coming along home, unless you count nursery rhymes. But I think Ozymandias has stuck with me all these years.
Ray, what do you write about? What are some of the predominant themes in your work?
I worked as a respiratory therapist for 30 some years, and I would come home from work after a day of all that stuff respiratory therapists do in a big teaching hospital. And I would write something down. I'd write something until I quit writing and I'd throw it in the pot. And I did that for years. And that was about work pretty much, about interactions with people and understanding people's interactions. Now, my predominant themes have to do with the extraordinary events that happen in our lives, both locally and globally. Extraordinary events, the ones that really reach me, the one that triggers the muse to get busy and write. I write on a lot of different subjects now, a lot of nature. It has significant influence in my writing, although I may look at an elk on a hillside while I'm out in the woods, but my poem, you never know where they go, and it may not be about an elk, even though it starts off that way. But I do spend a lot of time in nature, and I have the privilege to be with the poetry group here in Colorado Springs, and they know that I write a lot of animal stuff, and because I read to them, and they read to me, and we really share freely, that sort of thing. It's a wonderful little group. What triggers me to write, what I will stop doing what I'm doing if I hear or I see an extraordinary event, and I'll sit down and write. Those are my predominant themes now. What triggers my muse to write is what I see, what moves me. In order to be moved, you have to be in touch with your emotion.
Please share a poem.
This one's called No Chance of Rain. It was a warm, sunny day with 2 grandsons in tow, making me wonder if I had been a good son when I was little. Sunlight illuminates everything. Thank you.
I think I'd like you to share that one again. Please.
Again?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, I can do that. No trouble. No chance of rain. It was a warm, sunny day with 2 grandsons in tow, making me wonder if I had been a good son when I was little. Sunlight illuminates everything. Thanks.
All great writers have great writing influences. Who are some of yours? What makes them great in your eyes?
I've already mentioned Billy Collins. He's an amazing poet, and I actually I wrote him a letter 10 years ago, and he actually responded to me, and I've got it to my computer screen over there.
Mm-hmm.
I'll look at it. William Carlos Williams is one. I got interested in his work because he was a doctor. He was a physician, a medical doctor, and near and dear to me with my background. Another one is a Swede named Thomas Tranströmer, a Nobel winner for his poetry. Amazing visuals in his work. Ammons, amazing writer, amazing poet. In the Scott Momaday is a Native American here. We lost him in January, which is too bad. He was a master, just an amazing writer. Native American, Kiowa. Maya Angelou, yes, has been an influence for me. Amazing writing. She expresses her ethnicity in amazing ways. An Irishman named Seamus Heaney, is a very big influence on me. I could go on, but I'll end with Mary Oliver. I really like her work. I read the poet. Everybody that I've named already, I've got several of their books, and I used to go to the library and try to find these books. The problem with that, even if you can find it in the library, problem is they want the book back. I don't want to give the book back.
Please share a poem.
Okay. This piece was published by the Galway Review in Ireland in January this year. I wrote it when I was out in the woods, camped in Black Canyon, Colorado. It's called In a Promised Land. The canyon gorge divides the earth. People of the northern tribes from people of southern lives. This evening warmth prevails with a gentle wind rising. The clouds float white, puff, calm, above a riotous red and cream dichotomy of a gaunt canyon wall. A man stands on the southern cliff face. He plays a rich tenor sax. The solid middle register resounds in the chasm. Many swallows fly, swooping to his jazz triplet phases, dotted 16. The clouds above Black Canyon have nowhere to go, yet they float off anyway towards a nirvana no one knows. A woman stands on the opposite northern precipice edge. She sings an ancient ballad reminiscent of an old Irish tune in a fine alto voice. Clear and strong notes fill the air. A falcon flies near, appears to hover nearby on an updraft, banking on the steady phrasing to the right, to the left. There are mountaintops off in the distance. Over yonder wilderness, miles, miles. Music is about the joy of loving. Key modulates. Both musicians follow each other effortlessly. Below, the light of Black Canyon deepens in the sunset. The music continues, now meshed in a unique harmony. Evening clouds are pink ivory. Nonetheless, in listening to the harmony rising, air is full of a peace, promising the freedom to believe. Thanks.
I'm wondering, is writing a poem letting your guard down or building a wall?
I'd have to go with the former on there. But letting my guard down. I don't ever have any intention of building walls in my poetry. I mean, I write poetry of agitation and poetry of witness. And I suppose that someone out there may very easily build their own walls, but I don't deliberately build them. But letting my guard down is me opening up to the muse. And I'm one that likes to poke me a lot.
So when you write, who leads, you or the muse?
I'm a vehicle.
The vehicle.
I'm a vehicle.
And the muse drives.
And I write every which way I can.
So let's go back to the car. You're the vehicle, and the muse is driving. Where is she taking you to?
Remember, I look at the extraordinary events in our life. And so when I sit down and write, it's those events, and what comes out at the end of the poem may not be anything that it started. But I don't try to prove the poem. I don't do any editing as I write. I don't worry about punctuation. I don't worry about misspellings. Someone thankfully invented spell check, and I can go back and correct all of that. I think whoever invented spell check should get a milk. But I don't focus on any of that, and I just focus on where to guide the words. I know that sounds ooey-oo maybe, but
No,
that's what I do.
Here's a question that I rarely ask. When you think about poetry, what color is it? What color is poetry?
I think what color is incredibly limiting. It's many colors. I'm convinced poets have a vision of the world that very few other people share. And I don't think it's just, we just see things differently. And part of that is being present to the colors, meanings of colors that you include in the work that you write.
Okay, so if we see things as poets differently from others, then how are we perceived by others?
I'm pretty sure they all think we're kind of strange.
Probably.
But that's all right. See, we're following an art form. We're artists, and we're expressing things that we see. For example, that extraordinary event that I like to participate with in my writing.
Yes.
See those things, and we say, that really has me moved to write something. And then because if I've crafted a poem that's a good poem, people are going to enjoy, it's going to mean something to that sentient being out. And maybe what that means is to them may be entirely different from what I'm writing. And that's one of the cool things about it, is that we're all different. We all have different ways of perception about what we read and see and hear.
Ray, based on what you know about the world, your lived experiences, does it hurt you to write poetry? If not, why not?
I sometimes write out of hurt. Remembering people that I've lost in my life sometimes wounds me, and I write about that. Or it reopens the wound. I don't really want to go into the people that I've lost in my life. I'll be 70 this month, Michael, and I've lost a few folks that I cared deeply about. So I write about that. I try not to focus everything about it. I try not to put a third book was called For the Lost in Love. And I wrote that after the loss of my wife. And it's been well received. But that was a time period when I lived in a tent for 3 months in a bear preserve and just got over things. And now I'm writing about much more vivacious, much more virgin. And that's what I choose to focus on.
Let me ask this question. Are you willing to be hurt by the poetry of others? If not, why not?
I don't see how if I read, yes, I'm willing to be hurt by the poetry of others is the answer. But to go on, I don't know how you can be involved with someone else's poem that reaches you and not feel it. In other words, by opening the page and reading his work, I'm giving myself permission to feel that. I'm giving myself permission to glean an image or to sense a metaphor. There's so many, I hate the word device, but I'm going to use it. There's so many poetic devices.
Yes.
That I can't name because I'm not an educated, I don't have a master's degree in creative writing. And I'm sure there's many more I've seen professor could name, but I cannot. But I'm willing to be open to that. And if some of that reaches in and talks to me about an ugly thing that happens to somebody, a rape or a significant affront or a killing or if that hurts me, then I'm going to allow that. I'm giving myself permission to get that from the book I'm reading. And the same is true for joy. If you hear something about the miracle of a difficult birth, or two people coming together after so long, two people finding each other, those are happy things. And So I'm willing to be open to all those things when I read somebody else's work.
Ray, please share another poem.
Cool. All right, I've got a longer one for you now. I mentioned earlier in this program that I spend a lot of time in nature.
Yes.
And I do. I'm in the woods. My family can tell you that I go away. And I go to the woods and I camp and I bring my dog and I have my iPad that I write into and I spend days. I cook all my own food. I provide my own. I went to Idaho in 2022 and the Frank Church Wilderness in Idaho is the second largest wilderness in this country, but very few people know about it. I was camped there on the banks of the River of No Return. Can think that a cool name, but that's just what the locals call it. It's really called the Salmon River. So this is a poem about that. In a grove by the Salmon River, somewhere on this river, what is left today is a sacred spot with warm energy. The Shoshone lived on this river long before Lewis or Clark or even 1805. I stand here now in this silent grove, tall pine trees standing watch as the river rushes by, likely as it did those many years before. See things that are not there, wisps in the glen, gray mist drifting, a feeling of past gurgling over the rapids flowing by. A wisp of mist swirls, turning into an old man, a Native American. He speaks to me in a language I do not understand, holding my hands open, shrugging my shoulders to show I cannot comprehend. The old Shoshone man walks up to me, looks directly in my eyes. Looking back unflinchingly, I see there's a depth there in his eyes. And I wonder, did he hide his affection, win or lose something in his life not so very different from mine? Our eye communication ends with his speaking accented English this time. You are standing on my son's grave. I moved to the left a pace or two. Now you're standing on my daughter's. This entire grove is burial ground for my people. See that tall pine over by the river? That's where my body lies. I don't need it anymore. Again, looking in my eyes. There down on the riverbank is a good place to sit and talk. You won't be walking on my family there. You're going over to where the river roared by, seeing the faces behind his face. There was at least 30 faces there, each one a bit smaller than the preceding until they faded away. My people don't hide their love. Your people are like wheels turning round, round, sometimes going nowhere. Fewer times getting where you have the desire to go. I looked at this man from so long ago, offered him smoke from my pipe. He said, just blow it through me. Laughing at the folly, smiling, I asked this man about the failings of his people. His response, men don't understand women, Brian. We honor them, and we try to find a way. This, I realized we were very much alike. He arose, another one of those long looks. We were eye to eye again. That moment that seemed long, however likely only lasted seconds. Turning, my new friend walked into the river. It was gone. Reflecting on this strange occurrence, did the old Shoshone have to shake it up or even make it up to have a real closeness with the women of his time? Certainly, in my time now, there's a secret world everyone has inside. Thank you.
I need a second to process the power of that piece, Ray.
It was a wonderful camp there. I didn't camp in this grove.
Tell me about the purpose of that poem, Ray.
You mean what it means? Or You're asking about the meaning of that poem?
Why did you write that piece?
There's a road on the north bank of the river, and it goes about 25 miles down the bank. It's dirt and it's gravel in places. At the end of the road is a ranger station of all things, forest ranger. And they have a grove marked off right there at the ranger station that is marked off with markers where it says Shoshone Burial Ground. And that poem came to me out of that. Now, there wasn't a guy coming out of the river who spoke Shoshone to me, and that was just all what came to me out of that.
It's a beautiful piece.
Thanks.
What did you learn about yourself from writing that particular piece?
I think part of that piece is an expression of the desire to be tolerant of other people's ways and to be understanding and open.
In that poem, what are some of the lines that you're most proud of writing or that you felt most challenged to write?
I like the idea that I was proud that this guy started speaking English without being broken. And I also like a wisp of mist swirls turning into an old man. I think there's a big visual there. I guess one of the big things in this poem that I really like a lot is the fact that there's this magical dichotomy between men and women. I think love supersedes in amazing ways. I think women are lovely beings that perhaps are have deeper keels than we men. And I think that we men have different focuses than women do. And when people get together, a man and a woman, or to be modern can be between same sex as well as opposite sex. Is when two people meet, and then there's one that's just amazing.
Do you live your life like it's a poem?
When I live my life, do I live my life like a poem?
Yes, like it's a poem, yes.
What a great one question. I don't know. I have to think about that one. Do I live my life like a poem? I look at things and I say, I could write about that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll stop on the side of the road if I see something and go, that's pretty neat. Let me try to remember that one. Or I'll sit and write. I've taken to keeping a pencil in the car. It's the same thing with photography with me. I take a lot of pictures, Michael, and I use them on my book covers. And I'll stop anytime I see something that satisfies the photographer in me and pictures. So I'm doing the same thing when I write. Now, fortunately for me, I'm retired from the hospital and I can do that. If I was commuting to work, I could see where people would have difficulty taking that moment and writing things down. But I don't have that trouble.
Ray, there's good, there's bad, there's ugly, as well as indifference in this world. What do you view as being the role of a poet in modern day society?
I think the role of the poet is to enhance the possibility of a better world in some form. Yes. But it's difficult where we live, when we live, and the things we have to do and pay the damn phone bill and all those things. It's not easy. And I have a sign on my door that I read every day, and it says, the only easy day was yesterday.
Wow.
And I wish I could take credit for writing that originally. I cannot. It's actually a Navy SEAL motto. But I think the role of a poet, we have the opportunity to write as agitators, to write as witnesses, to write joyously or sadly. I think that's the part of the role of a poet. I think a lot of spoken word, at least what I have heard, is poetry of witness, and clever, and intriguing, and rhyming, and powerful, lovely stuff. I wish I could write that. I can't. I know that's not. I don't come from there. I don't come from that space.
Yes.
I attend bi-monthly. I attend an open mic that is predominantly made up of powerful speakers that come from that place.
Yes.
And their work is so very different than mine, and so intriguing and powerfully and strong. I'm just open jawed sometimes with the way it comes out. I think a poet's role, whether you're a man or a woman poet, whether you write eloquently or you're just now getting it out there, is to awaken the reader or the listener. If you're speaking, if you're reading in public, I think it's to enable a genuine inquiry in people's minds. And more than that, I think it's to shift the reader's experience, just the reader's experience about the subject, poem. I think there's a duty that we poets have to free that reader or listener when we write a poem. For example, somebody's lost somebody that was near and dear to them and they missed them terribly.
Yes.
And if you read a poem about someone else's loss that magically gets in there with you and eases your pain, or it brings your pain out so that it can ease, so that tears can shed, it can ease. I think it's to better someone's mind through verse, through the images, I think if we poets have a way to access what somebody's already got in their head, their pictures, it's a meaningful piece to that person.
They say that to see the world with complete honesty, one should look to comedians, poets, musicians, and writers. What do you think emerges from you, Ray, when you write poetry?
Focus a lot of my work now is those extraordinary events, the extraordinary events in our life. One of the reasons that I wrote that piece, Homo Naledi, was because this is 250,000 years ago. They dated these bones in this cave in South Africa. And they found in the cave, deep in the cave, that there were burial rituals 250,000 years ago, quarter of a million years ago. And we always think that our ways of honoring the dead are our ways of honoring the dead, and they certainly didn't do that when they were Neanderthals or Homo Naledi. But these researchers, these archaeologists, have discovered that there was ritual around the burial of the dead, of these hominoid dead, which was a real breakover, because who would have thought, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. Those are the extraordinary kind of things. Now, don't want to talk about death all the time, and it's just to be an extraordinary event. At least it was for me. Okay, I know a lot about death rituals because I've lost people in my life, and some of the people I lost were worthy of a significant ritual.
Yes.
I mean, I have people buried in Arlington National Cemetery. That's a significant place, just a hallowed ground. But to think that 250,000 years ago, these hominoids were doing a ritual around burying their dead rather than just leaving, oh, he's not moving anymore. Let's go on. That's amazing. It's enhancing a form of caring, loving the world in ways that are tangible, in ways that bring people closer together.
It does. But there are no rights or wrongs. No rights or wrongs. Please share another poem, Ray.
This piece here, I was a delegate to the 2024 Panorama International Writers Festival out of Athens and Italy, Athens, Greece, and Rome, Italy. And this piece I wrote for them seemed to be very well received. And they put there was like almost 100 writers, poets and writers from all over the world. People who spoke languages I couldn't pretend to tell you what they said. People who spoke in English. Most of the presentations were in English. That was one of the criteria. And so this piece here is, I wrote just one more wee bit of background for people that don't know much about the Greek gods. Agni was the god of fire. And we were supposed to include that in this piece. So here we go. This one's called Again and Again. Happens again and again. When we all act like strangers in our faraway, strange lands. Heinlein had it right. The need for love is so great. In this time of orange violence, no matter whether in Ukraine or Gaza or Yemen or the Congo or even Myanmar, from the mountains, we armed apes descend with our instruments of war. It happens again and again, starting all over. Agni calls us to burn that away and replace with the spark, the concord of creation. So peace resumes being spelled capitals. We come with our cultural animosities, stupidly dropping smart bombs where the children, otherwise innocent, watch the demolition of their familiar streets, once so loved, now filled with debris. It's again, starting all over, coming through the eons. When we should remember to being present to a warm, sunny day, nurturing our lives and loves. People stop remembering. If for only a quick gray minute, just so absent the memory that megalomaniacs are from darkness. Otherwise, likewise, forgetting that good, clear light must prevail over the presence of evil's blackness. It happens again and again, starting all over as if never having understood, hiding from the lush jungle of history's dusty pages. Instead of learning from them that peace comes from within and then warmly spread. It can happen again and yet again. Thank you.
Powerful, powerful piece. There's a lot of resonance in your voice. My question is, what is the relationship between your speaking voice and your written voice?
Oh, I have a background in music.
Okay.
I have a bachelor's degree in music. I was a bass trombone player for a long time. I was good at it. I learned performance at the conservatory. And so I bring that to the party when I read to people. Now, you wanted me to compare my speaking voice to my reading voice, and I guess my speaking voice is just regular, and my reading voice is performance. I'm not sure if that's a good answer to your question.
It's the perfect answer because some people believe that poetry should stay on the page, where there are others who feel that poetry should be lifted off the page through performance.
There's not a spoken word poet out in the world today that would agree with that statement. They're out there reading, or they're not out there reading, they're out there speaking it, and there's no page in front of them. Where the other side of the coin is that I can tune into YouTube and watch a Nobel laureate read to the Nobel audience in Sweden, where he's got it right in front of him on the podium. I think poetry demands to be off the page.
You know, that's a very strong statement, Ray, that poetry demands to be off the page. I'd like to ask you, why?
It's that art form thing again. What I think is really interesting is, more than a little intriguing, is how well poetry is received in so many other countries. The Arab nations and the Middle Eastern nations all seem to take a big delight in poetry. And some of their poets have integrated philosophy of life in their pieces more than we do in the West. There's I think a lot of the spoken word poets in our country today, here in the United States, are expressing tremendous amount of intuitive anger for what's happening, or what has happened to them, or what they've seen happen. I'm way off course here, aren't I?
No, you're not. I'm enjoying the conversation. Please continue.
I formed a piece with a fellow that I'd only just met, who's now become a good friend of mine. He's of a different ethnicity than I. And the poem came out of a writing prompt in a class I was in. But it wasn't just like raw out of the class. I spent some time on this poem. I was very creative in the use of white space, and I was very creative in the use, and there were two voices in this poem. And the writing prompt was, two men have been gunned down on the street in an American city. Two black men. And that's what this poem is about. And this fellow that I met, an event put on by a very fine local shop, Academy Art, called Art Aloud, where they get people together. Going on right now, actually, this month, this National Poetry Month, is about these two guys talking to each other after they've left their body. But it's really cool to write with someone who has a completely different perspective. Actually write with them, because I'm going to come to it from my way, my side, my view, and they're going to come to it from their view, and somewhere there's a mesh. Real interesting. But that experience, that fellow that I've come to know very well, and participate with his open mics too. He's a poet of renown around here, and we've become good friends just out of reading that piece of poetry together.
Please share with me the titles of 5 of your poems. Any 5 from any of your books, manuscripts, the titles of 5 poems.
Okay. Mountain Glen, New Dream of the Woods, and Stories from the Before, Black Moose. I think that's 5. That's 5.
My question is, what role should a title play in a poem?
I rarely use the title in my poem. I use the title as a setting the ground for the poem. I don't use the title like you're going to find it in the poem, although I have written some poems that the title is in there. Mm-hmm. And there may be words from the title amongst the verse, but I try to have The title always comes to me first.
It does.
Yeah.
The title comes first, then the poem.
And then that's like I write the title down, and then a millisecond later, I'm into it. The rest of it.
So is that the muse giving you the title?
Yes. My muse has green hair.
Do you ever argue with the muse?
I don't know about arguing. Is editing arguing? I try not to edit anything as it comes out.
Okay.
That's been my training
All right, then.
as a poet. And I do edit later because, like I said, the spell check inventor should have gotten a memory or a medal. And I do edit later for punctuation. I use white space very creatively. That never happened when I first write.
That's one of the questions that I ordinarily ask. Some poets claim that a poem is like a living creature. Once it's out there, there's not much you can do to correct or improve it, while others edit meticulously, not leaving much from the original draft form. So, what is your take on the editing process?
I don't edit a lot. I have never taken days and days to write one poem. And it's my opinion that my best work comes out and I might have to change a spelling, or I might have to change a couple words. That's it. That's it. There's no more editing needed. And that's not to say that I'm not willing to edit it. It's just that I didn't have to. I think that my best work comes out like that.
So you're not Walt Whitman in terms of editing many different versions of your work.
No. And in fact, I was incredibly surprised when I was told by a friend of mine who is a professor of English that Walt Whitman edited his Leaves of Grass 15 times. There are 15 different versions of that book. They got some universal pieces in there, right? But I was like, really? Wow. Because this wasn't with an iPad. That was long hair. On paper he had to buy. It wasn't like today where editing is so much easier to do if you're so inclined.
So what do you think your work conveys about the human condition?
I work this day and age, the last year and 18 months, global things I see a need for, and I try to address them. I see the need for beauty. So I write about some of those things. I mentioned the Webb telescope a little while ago. Those photographs explode my mind. The poem I read earlier again and again is addressing disasters. And one of the most important disasters that poem addresses is that we somehow allow megalomaniacs to exist instead of shooting them on sight. We allow those people to take over and do things that we would never take on ourselves to do. So, I mean, there's so much to write about that's extraordinary. That's well beyond the average, and well beyond just paying the damn phone bill.
Ray, we've reached my favorite part of the episode. I view it as being a mini poetry lovers concert. This is an opportunity for you to share 3 or 4 poems back to back without interruption from me. Ray Whitaker, you're on the stage.
Okay. Here's one that I think everybody will enjoy. Texting or bugling. Cool darkness is setting in here at 9,400 feet elevation in Colorado. absolutely zero self-service. Even that didn't keep the beautifully created gal I call Fred from sending a text here. How it came through this high alpine valley, I don't know. Nonetheless, she wrote her first poem in years and sent it to me. Instead of bull elk bugling, calling, his version of a text from higher up there on the slope. A doe answered him down on Clear Creek, a few yards away. A return text. It's a stretch to call it. It'd be a quantum shift for the elves. Tomorrow in town, when there is cell service, I'll send her this poem just to respond to her fine reach out, and I'll likely send it to her by text. I have been in and out of the American South all my life, and I moved here to Colorado from North Carolina, where I had been for the last 30. I miss this is backstory to this piece that I'm about to read you, but I miss the Southern. I do. Occasionally I write pieces in Southern speak, and this is one of them, where it's not crisp Kansas English. This is from the South. It's called Mountain Glib. Sometimes he walked like he knew the difference. Sometimes he walked like a babe in the woods. There was the day when he wanted it so bad, and there was the day when he just couldn't understand. He walked up to the high glare where the oaks and pines are oh so tall. The waterfall pours its way and dropping into it. Camp hearth near, made of stones. Red on alone. Red on up into Red on alone. She told anyone that would listen that she couldn't be led. She told him that if he would just listen, that she would be listening there together too. Read on, just to go into where the songbirds sing. Read on, just to walk into that very place. Sometimes he walked there just ever so often. Sometimes he walked there just a now and just a then. There was the days when he was wanting it so badly. There was the days when he just couldn't make it. Someone said he's gone to his glen. Comment made a quiet voice. Those that knew him, special didn't know him, knew what they was talking. Stride on, going where the grasses bend. Stride on into where the dew does wet your feet. Trees are just in so cold, where the whispered wind blow the voices together. He could love there those his blue ridge red oak leaves, and she could love the rocket mountains. He might follow her where she was born to go. There she could speak about the blue sky. He might could lead them both up into those high woods. She could feel the dew was wetting the ground. Stride on along. Tread there up into it all. Thank you. And I don't know how much time we got left.
How many pieces do you have to share?
I only prepared 15. So I guess I should jump close to the end because it looks like I'm going to end with this one here.
No, give me two more. Two more. Yes.
Okay.
2 or 3, actually. We've got time. We started a little late, remember?
All right.
We're good.
We did start a little late.
Yes, we're good.
All right.
There's no rush.
These next couple of pieces are new. I've written them between now and a month ago. And this one's just last week. It's called Brain of the Woods. Eyes open, careful, treading, wondering about while wandering about. Walking through the woods with no apparent destination. Not off towards the horizon or away from the dawn. Just someplace between living and dying. Brown bark tree trunks, like those of mighty tall pines. There's the green leaves, not those of a pine, more like those of a poplar. in full summer growth, a tramped yellow grass on the path before me where I walked barefoot. Rounding a gentle curve betwixt taller grasses, a peacefulness here with happy bird chatter, settling on my ears like warm breeze on springs into a clearing in these thick woods. A space opening up like creation, fresh as a new birth, building in intensity like a poem developed. There in the middle, a 10-foot tall mirror with gold gilded frame all around, resting on a newly cut dais of fresh logs, the dominant character in this glade full of life. Could have been a passageway, perhaps a setting off into some place like Valhalla or Elysium or even heaven, but it was not. No pot of gold at the end of the rainbow here, a mirror that has shone, icing in sunlight, reflecting that what was before it, the vision of the features and characters of the sentient standing. It began to rain. The water washes coursing down the reflection. And I'll do two more.
All right. Very nice.
Okay.
Yes, of course.
This one is called Stories from the Before. And there are a great many warriors. The tales about them are about the steel. Shiny metal dragons flying, separating the wood. Gray metal whales cleaving the sea. Those steel rhinos dissevering the enemy. There are a great many renditions about the brave who, once having been fearful, became fearless, facing enemies with found courage. My father was one of them. He flew steel dragons dropping from the sky inside God's bubble, making the ground shake, and those on it afraid of fire from the sky. 3 great conflicts did he fly the steel dragons, girding his loincloth ready for the fight, carrying fire to his enemies. There are many accounts of dropping out of clouds, silently falling earthwards, bringing terror to those bound to the ground. The hordes of Mongols dissolved. I have his blood in me, being of the warrior clan. Courage flows in my arteries. Resilience courses in my veins because of that. It's joy to know this part of me. Because of that, I can look bare on. If I should die from it, that will be a good death. I will join the others from the before. Swiftly, when that occurs, the shared blood draws it nigh. My father waits for me there. We will see each other again and tell our stories of the earth. I'm going to end with a long one. This one, it took the longest time for me to actually give a little bit of background on a poem, because I thought all poetry should just stand alone, represent itself adequately. Everybody will get what it has to give. But I have found that people like a little background. And so I'm going to tell you a little background on this one. I was camped again in the wilds. I was camped on the banks of the North Arkansas River here in Colorado. At this point, that river is about as wide as a really substantial creek. And it's riotous. I mean, it just pours over rocks. And when I was up there, it was full of snow melt. So it was even bigger. Things were overflowed. So anyway, that's where I was when I wrote this. This one's called Black Moose. Resonates with me. My encounter with another mysticism of nature at the edge of the mountain land. Chancing near it, the large black mass standing stationary in the aspens, as if to be unnoticed by being still. A bull moose eating leaves from above its head. Thin line of silver fur going from mighty shoulder to mid-back. Young antlers soon to be a fierce armament, now in velvet, growing as if to scoop up the world. Moving closer, keeping a mature pine twixt. to maybe over 1,000 pounds of magnificence and my wonder. Thus occupied, I did not worry when he stopped eating, looking in my direction, standing there wondering about me, perhaps, as it stood in the depth. So astonished at the proximity, noticing the depth of these brown eyes, pushing souls together, mine to his, brown mine to brown his. Iris is different, mine round than his oval. Being in the moment of no thought, now wondering if he had a name. No feeling of fear in that closeness, only around 20 paces separating us. The sun shone on me as I looked and felt that regal pallor black throat. The strength, assurance commanding the ground he stood on, owning the very earth. He is next to the tree, probably moved so silently, and keeping the thick pine between us, our lives locked still, getting what each other had to give, my consciousness mingling with the being of this immense creature. His long neck craning around, reaching nearly into my face. I moved away, breaking and keeping the pine tree between us to having become a wood beetle exposed under the bark. I retreated to the next few pines nearby. I am the rhinoceros beetle now. Our conversation had not ended, though no word had been spoken out loud, no malice felt, only a near wistfulness from the moose and I. Like a translator would be appreciated to move the instances together somehow. Staring into each other's eyes for longer still, feeling the thoughts, each having our own insights of consciousness, intuition, intuitiveness, power, rippling, muscled, black, now moving away. My human was touched by this moment. Even wanting to know where all this would go, I did not follow deep into this thicket, his woods. Thank you for listening.
Ray Whitaker, were you destined to be a poet?
Yes. I think that's a one-word answer. I walked through the hospitals for 34 years of healthcare. I saw the human condition. I saw it at its death's door. I saw it as its weeping worst. I saw it as its joyous happiness when a baby was born or something. We respiratory therapists were in all that. All that. We had a diverse job description. And I couldn't help but think all the words that I had to say about it. I think if my mother was still alive, she would probably say, he's always been wordy. But anyway, I think a lot of my intuitiveness about the human condition, it comes out of my work. And I think a lot of that comes from that recent experience of 34 years in a hospital. I worked clinical care for a long time. And I think it's been tempered by the fact that I have a musical degree, and tempered by the fact that I have always sensed other people's waves.
Right.
I know that sounds like something out of the Twilight Zone.
Not to me. Here's a thought-provoking question. What insights do you believe you've gained about yourself through your journey as a poet?
A couple of things there.
Okay.
I've learned that my heart is too open. I just think that I give it away too easy. I've learned that about myself. Big. And the other thing I've learned is that I'm so surprised by the interpretations of people that hear my work. In a way, maybe I present a piece, stories of the before that I read a bit ago about, and somebody can hear that, come up with talk about their family member who worked toward peace when the intention of the poem would be related to the war. It always surprises when people see, hear, feel, and share with me after they hear me read. So I learn again and again. I learn the complex nature of reading.
Where can we purchase your books?
You want a signed copy, get it directly. You don't want a signed copy, or if you want a regular copy, all of my books are available on Amazon. And downtown in Colorado Springs, there are two bookstores and an art gallery that have my work in here in Colorado. And I'm going to be one of the first to admit that I'm not a great marketer. I'd much rather spend the time writing or listening to other poets, engaging with that sort of thing than I do marketing. But I put a lot of work aside during my wife's illness, and I brought it all out. I've got 2 books, 2 manuscripts on different editors' desks right now. And there's another one sitting right over there that I need to go through. I write a lot. Can you tell? I was talking to some friends the other day, and I encouraged them to write every day. And one of the things that I learned from class that I continue to take is to just write it. Maybe it comes out like it's really bad writing, but maybe it comes out like a real gem. But if you don't write it, you don't get it out. So I do that all. I have written 61 poems since the first of the year. I number them. I keep them in a file by month. It's the 2nd of April, and I haven't written one in April yet.
Where do you go from here? I know you're working on 2 manuscripts. What else is on the horizon, my friend?
Meet up with another old Indian. I'm going to the Canyon of the Ancients, which is in the western part of this state.
Okay.
Or the Four Corners region. There's a lot of cliff dwellings there.
Mm-hmm.
Me and my dog are going to go camping. That's the end of this month. We gone on my birthday doing that. And hopefully I'll meet another old Indian. And write something new about that. But beyond that immediacy, my goal is to get my work out of the world.
I understand.
And when I say the world, I mean that big globe, all the countries and weather and stuff. That's my goal.
Ray, we've reached the end of our poetic journey. I'd like to thank you for joining me. You're a remarkable man, a remarkable poet, and I look forward to your next visit to the podcast. Thank you again. Good night to you, and good night to our audience.
Still craving poetry? Hundreds of episodes of the quintessential listening, poetry, online radio, and YouTube podcast are available to listen to or download on iTunes, Spotify, and other streaming platforms. To learn more about the popular podcast or how to become a guest, visit www.QLPORYT.com. Till next time, take care and let poetry ring somewhere throughout the land.